Tears in my eyes from our service, so I'm going to try to read this. So if I forget something, it's okay.
That's fine.
Kris Seastedt is a registered Lilydale medium and a certified fairyologist. Kris's Swedish and Irish background allows her to incorporate the richness of her heritage and her expertise with the fairies. Kris has taught college courses in energy, meditation, and basic astrology. She has worked as a manager, trainer, and regional manager in the airlines, which allowed her the desire to soar with the fairies and angels. As a site manager, she worked with autistic adults using meditation and trips to Inspiration Stump. Her work at Chautauqua Institution included running the main gate, the Welcome Center, the box office, phone sales, group sales, and conference services. Kris has co-authored books and oracle cards. Born and raised in Jamestown, Kris has incorporated Lilydale into her life since she was a teenager. She continues enjoying teaching and serving the Lilydale community. I guess we heard that with her announcement tonight. She is humbled by being of service to Spirit and the clients she is blessed to serve. So it certainly is my pleasure to introduce my friend Kris Seastedt.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I said I'm going to wing it tonight. I'm usually a little bit more prepared. So the theme is light and shadow. And I'm the youngest of 4 children, so I know a lot about shadow in my life. So when I was growing up, especially when I went to school, I would always be asked, is Eric your brother? Is Tanya your sister? And I always knew what sibling they talked about, whether I needed to pause or explain or just enthusiastically say yes. So if it was Michael, I was like, oh, so he was a troublemaker. But a wonderful person, regardless. So I always grew up being somebody's little sister, or, are you as good as your sister or your brother, or whatever like that. And then I also was very blessed with an amazing father. And to this day still, which I'm very proud of, I get asked often, are you Ron Seastedt's daughter? Which I always proudly say yes. There's no hesitation there. So my dad did a lot for the community. He did a lot for the county. He did a lot for himself. And my dad grew up in an orphanage. So he lost his mother at the age of 3. And he was number 7 of 8 children. Talk about a shadow. So they, back in the day, this was in the 30s, my grandfather put them in an orphanage. So he couldn't handle 8 children by himself. And my dad's youngest sister had to go live with a relative because she was too young to go into the orphanage. So my father grew up in the orphanage, and he was always very grateful for that. And I see pictures of him, and he's smiling, and, but I know they didn't have the best growing up there. And my father refused to eat chocolate pudding because on Sundays, they ate chocolate pudding for dinner every Sunday at the orphanage. So at the tender age of 16, my father decided to go and join the military. His brothers were all joining, so this would have been in 1948. And so he went to each branch of the military and tried to sign up, and they were asking for his birth certificate and said, you're too young, you're too young, you're too young. Well, lo and behold, the Marines said, come on aboard. So, so my dad became a Marine at the age of 16. And I see pictures of him over in Korea at 16, and my father had such a baby face and blonde curly hair, it's where I get it from, and he went into the Marines at 5'8", and when my dad came out, he was 6'2". So there was a lot of change with my dad when he came back. So growing up in an orphanage, no parents. His father died right before he turned 5, unfortunately. So both of my grandparents on that side were in heaven. So my dad stayed in the orphanage. And when my dad came back, different than how life is now, it was like, okay, good luck. Thanks for your service. You're on your own kind of thing. So my dad was in that prime position to be bitter, very bitter. He was fortunate enough to have an older sister who was married, so her home was kind of home base. But still, she was starting a family. Her husband didn't want all her brothers, fresh from the military, in their house. So my dad devoted himself right then and there to a life of service. He started out driving an ambulance at the old General Hospital in Jamestown, which is not in existence anymore. The hospital's still there, but it's not a hospital. And I'm grateful for that because that's where he met my mom, who was an X-ray technician at the time. But then my father decided to be a police officer in Jamestown. And so he devoted his time, to serving and to giving back. And my mom said in their early years of, being newlyweds and starting a family, and my dad obviously having a pretty demanding job as a police officer, my father always went back to the orphanage to help. He went back to milk the cows. He went back to basically do whatever it was that was asked of him. Because instead of being bitter, my dad got better. And he decided that he wasn't going to be in the shadow of being an orphan, and he wasn't going to be in the shadow of, growing up the way that he did. He decided that he was going to devote his life to being of service because of all the people that served him. And he always felt indebted to the city of Jamestown because they raised him. So, and I think about that a lot because I feel like instead of being in that shadow, and I'm sure they were talked about, I think they all wore like kind of jumpsuits almost from the orphanage. And I'm sure people talked about him, oh, those poor orphan kids, or, and the Seastedts were quite well known because there were so many of them. And, but my dad didn't let that dim his light in this world. He didn't say, I'm going to grow up with my light on low because I have been overshadowed my entire life. And he decided to become a servant of everybody, a servant of the town and everything. He coached baseball, he refereed football, he was president of the school board in Jamestown. My dad was an active guy. And my mom says, that's where I get it from, which is part of the announcement I made tonight. So, darn you, Dad. No. So when my father passed away, I was only 19. He died a month before I turned 20. And I felt like my light had gone out. I felt definitely very shadowed by grief more than anything. And I'm so grateful for him as my father because he's the one that taught me, don't dim your light. There may be things that happen to you in your life where your light is covered, or that you might just turn it down because you need to do that for your own healing. You need to go within. But I, to this day, will ask my mother, do you think Daddy would be proud of me? Because that's so important to me still 38 years later. And so I really credit my father with getting out of the shadows. So back when I was in school, all of a sudden I wanted to be myself. I didn't want to be Eric's little sister. I didn't want to be Tanya's little sister. And so I wanted to be myself. So I started to let my own light shine. And I started to do things different than my brothers and sisters. And the only medium in the family. So obviously I took my own path, that's for sure. But it served me so well in my life. So when I was 23, my husband was killed in a car accident, and I was also in the car as well. And at the age of 23, you're pretty young. We were only married for a couple months, and it was a difficult time. And my mother-in-law at the time, this lovely lady, she said, Kris, you could ask for anything right now. You could, basically I could fall apart in a corner and everybody would be okay with that. And she goes, but you're really strong. And I took so much pride in that. Number one, because my husband would want me to be strong. But number two, I'm not the person to go crumple and be in the corner. And if somebody has to do that, that's fine. I'm not saying that you can't. But that's not me. And so still, I went through my grieving process. I went through my shadow times. But I'm the type of person that I'm going to have those shadow times on my time. and I don't want the sympathy. And, and people would tell me, Kris, you're a victim. I was a victim of a crime. And I said no, because for some reason, that word victim did not sit well with me at all. And even though I never want to be called a victim. And now it took me about 4 years after the accident to actually decide that I wanted to do something. I had sat in the shadow of that accident long enough. And I was afraid to tell people I was a widow. At the age of 23, everybody looks at you like, what? Did you make a mistake? What are you talking about? Do you know what that word means? And, I didn't want to be a widow. And I didn't feel like a widow. I didn't feel like I was married. I didn't feel like I was single. I kind of was in a limbo thing. But I did get remarried, and then I had my daughter, the one that's getting married. And I decided I wanted to do something, because this accident hung on me, and this accident will hang with me my entire life. And it doesn't define me, and it doesn't hang on me like a heavy weight that I can't get underneath, but it's there all the time. It's something I went through. It was major, and I can't erase it from my life. So I decided that I was going to speak. So I joined a victim impact panel. The first one I think I joined was in Erie County. And we speak to anybody who's convicted of an alcohol-related crime and tell them our story, because my husband was killed by a drunk driver. And I was in the car as well. And my husband's friend was killed with him. The two of them were killed, and his friend's sister and I were saved. And the only reason why I was saved is because my husband turned the steering wheel and the driver's side took all the impact. So the first time I saw the pictures of this accident, there is no reason I should be here, none at all. And the car was completely totaled. But there is a reason I'm here. And I think that has been my quest that I've searched for since that happened. I had a reading with one of our wonderful registered Lily Dale mediums, and she told me, she said, you saw the light in this accident. And I blacked out. I was knocked unconscious from the accident. And she said, you saw the light. She said, because you had to. I was like, it really made me think. And so you see, you can't have light without the shadow, and you can't have the shadow without the light. Your whole thing is, how do you control them? And the thing that we realize is that we have that control. We control how much light we want to give and how much we want to stay in that shadow. And sometimes it's great to stay in that shadow. And like I said, it's for healing, it's for self-preservation, it's for thinking, it's for meditating, it's for figuring it out. Because in my life, I've had to reinvent myself time and time again. I know that. But I'm so grateful for my father and all those people who have shown me that it's my light and it's my control. Because when something like that happens to you, I had no control over that accident happening to us at all. None. My husband didn't. The driver his blood alcohol level was 0.32. He was wasted. He had been drinking all weekend from Friday, and this happened on a Sunday afternoon at 4:30, bright sunny skies. So it wasn't 2 o'clock in the morning or when people think that happens. So, but now not only to honor my father, but to honor my husband, I go and I talk to him. And I've talked to magistrates, I've talked to school bus drivers, I've talked to schools. I had the pleasure of going back to my own high school and talking. We've talked to clubs, Rotaries, and I actually even got to go to the prison, which was probably one of the most intriguing and meaningful times that we ever spoke. There's a lot of shadow in a prison. There's a lot of misconception, there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of anger, but it's like to forgive is how we bring the light back in. I had to forgive the driver that killed my husband, because if I hadn't, I don't think I could do the work I do as a medium, but I don't think I could have gone on. You have to forgive, and to forgive is grace. And is it easy? No. It took me about those 4 years when I decided to to say that I was going to make some meaning of this and I was going to, find a purpose in it, because God saved me for some reason. So I need to figure this out. And it wasn't just to be a mother to my 2 girls. There's got to be something else. So I remember I choked the words out. I forgive you. I forgive you, because I know he didn't mean to do it. He obviously had a problem, but he didn't mean to. But I couldn't live under the shadow of hatred. I couldn't live under the shadow of this whole incident anymore, because I had to be a light, not only for myself, but now I had a child that needed my light as well. So as we talk about light and shadow, I just feel that, like I said, we have all the power. We have all the power. And bad things happen. Right before tonight, I actually just did a celebration of life down in Pennsylvania and faced 5 siblings who had just lost their mother. And what a difficult thing that is. But their mother was such a light. And my words to them was, be a part of her legacy and take your cues from mom and remember her and talk about her and laugh about her and bring her right in and bring her light in to get some of that darkness away. It doesn't mean you don't mourn. We mourn. My dad's been gone for 38 years. I mourn him every day, in some way. Or maybe I don't mourn him, I just remember him and I honor him. And my husband's been gone, it'll be 35 years this fall. And I think of him every day, and I do everything I can to try to honor him, because I know he's part of my light. He's not part of my shadow. He's part of my light. And so to let his light shine and let my light shine, I'm just going to shine as brightly as I can, because that's the only way that I know how to live. So I ask all of you, if you don't feel like your light's shining, or if you feel like you've got that cloud over your head, none of you are Ziggy. Nobody walks around with that cloud over their head all the time, right? But if you feel that way, and we all do sometimes, I have a bad day, but just internally, visualize it, turn your light back up, because you have the power. You have the power to make your day better. You have the power to make your life better. And you have the power to shine as brightly and as long as you absolutely want to. And that is my hope and my love for all of you. So thank you for listening.